Hey everyone, welcome in. We're going to get started here in just a second. While we're waiting on everyone to join, please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. I'm Leah Houston. I'm a senior campaign specialist here at DVT Labs, and I'm based out of Portland, Oregon. And I'm really excited to kick off today's event on cost-effective data operations with the DVT Fusion engine. Alrighty, some housekeeping things. So we have the Q&A tab. Please use that Q&A tab for all of your questions, and a DVT product expert will answer them for you. We also have the chat tab. That's where you're letting us know where you're joining us from. So please continue to use that and have some fun with us today. Etiquette, please be kind to your fellow attendees and presenters. We want you to ask the tough questions, share feedback. We're glad that you're here, but let's keep it respectful and inclusive. Recording, yes, we will send out today's recording within 24 hours after the event wraps, so be on the lookout for that in your email inbox. And then lastly, we're going to send out a survey at the very end of today's webinar. Please be on the lookout for that survey. We'd love to get your feedback and how to improve these events for y'all in the future. Alrighty, so today's agenda. First, we're going to start with, why are we wasting our time? I bet you're refreshing perfectly good models a lot. Next, we're going to unwrap state-aware orchestration. So you can build what needs building, reuse the rest, and save lots of money. Then we're going to move on to advanced configurations. Make your models behave like you want, not like little expensive children who are on the naughty list and are getting coal in their stockings this year for running up your cloud bill. And then we're going to move into efficient testing. So why take a new test when you can skip it and reuse an older one? It's like regifting, but for compute. And then we'll move into proving the value. So less waste, more reuse, and smart tuning yields incredible value. We're going to show you how. And then we have our state-aware orchestration user chat. So you're going to hear from our earliest users at OB Insurance and Analytics 8 and their experiences and learnings. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. That's going to be great. And then lastly, we're going to get a look ahead at upcoming cost optimization features that help you slay your cloud bill in the new year. Alrighty, I'm going to stop roasting your cloud bills now so we can bring on someone who will show you how to fix them. Someone who definitely made the nice list this year, Santa's favorite product manager. Take it away, Ruben.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruben. I'm a product manager at DBT Labs, and I'm here to tell you a bit about what we've learned across thousands of projects. And that's really that data freshness doesn't have to mean wasted compute. And so every day, we're scheduling roughly 859,000 jobs across the DBT platform. And so that's almost a million runs covering analytics, data products, and AI workflows. But the problem is that the majority of these simply run hourly, even though the majority of the time the data hasn't actually changed. And this leads to us rebuilding thousands or even tens of thousands of models on every run that look exactly the same the second time around. And so this matters not just because of the wasted data warehouse compute, but also because it costs developer time, focus, and trust. And so developers end up spending cycles managing job schedules or figuring out which model belongs in which job instead of actually improving the models themselves. We found that operations teams lose visibility into what's actually new versus just a rebuild of the exact same data. And finally, we see that leadership starts questioning what value those extra runs actually deliver. And are we making the right trade-offs between the data latency on the one hand and the efficiency of our orchestration platform on the other? And so that's really why we built state-aware orchestration into Fusion. The idea is to cut costs intelligently and then let teams and all of you focus back on what actually matters. And really, when you think about the history of DBT and what it means to do a DBT build, we've really just accepted that freshness means rebuilding everything just in case something's changed. And when we set out to build state-aware orchestration, what we really started out asking is like, what if the platform could tell the difference at the model level between what's actually changed in the model's code or the data that feeds into it and what hasn't? And that's exactly what we do with Fusion. We bring that intelligence into our orchestration platform so that every time we do a dbt build, we only build what's actually new. And so let's talk about state-aware orchestration and how you can use this to reduce that wasted compute. Today, as you can imagine, when you run a dbt build across this simple DAG, we're going to go and we're going to rebuild every one of these models, right? And so dbt build equals 5 models built. With state-aware orchestration, what we're actually doing is keeping that cache at the model level of what the current data and current code state is. And so when we go and build this, we can see that there's new data feeding into some of this, right? And so we need to go and rebuild that stage customers and that dimension customers. But the rest of those we can simply reuse. And that leads to a whole lot less wasted compute and to our customers reusing 30% or more of models on every build. And the real question is, how does Fusion do this? We like to say on the team that we kind of move Fusion from dbt being a stateless piece of software to being a stateless engine with real-time model state. And if that sounds exciting to you, great, me too. But if that sounds a little confusing, what this really means is that as jobs are running, we keep a real-time cache of the entire environment with each model's hash data and code state. And so that means if nothing's changed, we simply don't build it, and we get lower costs across every build. It also means that we can make real-time decisions about what to build as we traverse across the DAG. And so it no longer matters which job runs which model, because all of these are reading and writing from that same shared state. And finally, that means that if 2 jobs build the same model at the same time, we're actually going to wait for that first one to finish. And this reduces the complexity because those models can no longer clash across different jobs. And so let's jump into a demo and I can show you what some of this actually looks like in practice. All right, so let's jump into our project here and see what state-aware orchestration looks like in action. And so we can jump into our project here, Dagshore Insurance, and we can go and have a look at our jobs. And the first thing you're really going to see is that rather than like the 3 to 7 jobs we have to run our production builds across different selectors or different parts of the DAG, we've really been able to consolidate down to a single job. And that single job is simply running dbt build every hour. And if you see the toggle here, we've got those Fusion cost saving features with state-aware orchestration enabled. And so I'm not going to make you wait for the full 49 seconds while this thing runs the full build. But what I am going to do is kick off a new build here, and then we can look at the difference with state-aware orchestration between this full initial build and this one I'm doing 2 minutes and 14 seconds later. And so in this first build, kind of what you'd expect is that we probably do have new data or new code to incorporate across that DAG. And so going into that build in this awesome new structured logs view, we can see that there were 13 models here and all 13 were successful. And so we can look at our locations model and we can see that we actually built this locations model because there were new changes detected, meaning there was new code or new data to incorporate into the DAG. Now, if we go back to our builds, we can see the first thing here, that second build I just kicked off, first thing to notice is that rather than that 49 seconds, this has only taken 27 seconds for that entire job. And that's really because when we only run the things that are changed, we're able to run a whole lot less compute against the data warehouse, and therefore it makes things a whole lot faster. And so hoping this one worked, going into our dbt build, we see freaking awesome. Rather than those 13 models being built, right? We do have 13 total still. We only have 2 models where we actually had changes, a new code or new data from those last 2 minutes. In this case, new data to incorporate, right? And so this customer targeting model, because there are new changes detected, we can see that table is being built. For the 11 other models in here, we can see that because there was no new data that had come in since that last production build, or no new code, because frankly, I'm the only one working on this project right now, there's nothing to build, and therefore rather than going and rebuilding those 11 models, we're simply able to reuse them from the cache and reduce the actual production builds we do against the data warehouse. And then to really understand what's happened here, we can go and have a look at what our lineage looks like. And we can see in this job build, for that place where the data has changed, right? We've built everything downstream of that. And we're able to understand from that model state for the rest of these, because they aren't fed by any of those sources or any of those code changes, there's no need to propagate that across the DAG, and therefore the vast majority of these models are just reused. And this is really the power of what we can do with state-aware orchestration. And so what we've seen is that from our customers and our own data team, simply by turning on state-aware orchestration, they've been able to save 10% plus on their data warehouse compute. And what I really want to talk about next is how you can then use advanced configurations to turn that 10% plus into 30% or even 50% savings across the data warehouse. And so what advanced configurations do is they really help you customize the behavior of both how sources and models behave in SAO. And so they help you deal with situations like the case where a model might be needed less often than its sources are fresh. You may not want to change the SLA of that source itself because that data is used by different parts of the DAG, but this allows you to slow down those models to meet the actual SLAs of the business when they're going to be needed less often than you might get new source data. And then the second thing you can think about is when you're looking upstream and saying, when do I incorporate new data? You might want to consider, do I want to wait until all of the things upstream have built, or simply do it whenever there's new data on any? And so what this really allows you to think about is, what do I want to wait for before I go to the next layer and start building that downstream model? And what you'll find is as we fine tune these configurations, we're able to dramatically increase how much is reused and therefore build less and less against the actual data warehouse because we're really trying to meet the SLAs of the business. And so with these advanced configurations, first of all, you can really define what it means for a source to be fresh. And so by default, we get this data from the warehouse info schema, but there are cases where you might want to define that with a specific column. And so you can do that with a load of that field, or even create a custom SQL query where you could go and get that metadata from an iceberg table. You could go and put in a custom combination of number of rows loaded and a date time in order to say, what does it actually mean for me to have new data and therefore kick off that build across my DAG. The second thing here is really thinking about those model SLAs and then setting build after. So we wait until enough time has passed, even when there is new data to incorporate. And then finally, that update on lets you specify whether we should wait on all upstreams to be updated or simply build whenever any of them are. And kind of the magic thing, I'm sure, about DBT is that because this all exists in your project YAML, you can incorporate this as sensible defaults at the project level and then override those across any folder, subfolder, or even individual model that really allows you to fine-tune your project to the exact configurations that make the most sense. And so let's jump back into our DBT project and see how we can apply these advanced configurations to further fine-tune what state-aware orchestration builds. So jumping back into our DBT project, we can really think about those advanced configurations as being a way to fine-tune the model built behavior of state-aware orchestration. And so, as you probably remember, if we jump back to our previous build, uh, we saw that even though we were only building this 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes after that first one, that because there was new data coming through in that stage customers and therefore through that customer targeting model, we went and built those again. And so a situation we might want to consider here is if the business needs these models less often than that data, which is pretty much streaming in, actually refreshes, how might we slow down these models by putting in place one of those build after configurations? And so if we jump across to our studio, we can think about a really easy way of doing this might just be able to put a default in our project YAML. And so jumping into our project YAML file, we can kind of see we have nothing set here right now, but we can think about, hey, what if I set a build after for all of those models at the staging level? And so we can create a new freshness config right here, right? And we'll create a freshness with build after, and then we're gonna put this in terms of a period and a count for what we want to define that build after on. And so if we want to say count here. And let's just, for the sake of argument, make this 2 hours and say, even when there is new data to incorporate, I actually want it to have been at least 2 hours since the last build before I build this again. So I've got count 2, period hour. And I can see I have that applying to everything at the staging level, although I could also go and override that for individual models, process default. And go and say adding build after. I commit those changes. And maybe don't try this at home because it's not great, but we're going to bypass the rules here. I'm not going to make you wait for those actual CI checks to merge. I'm just going to confirm that and merge that into production. And now if we go back into our job here, right, and we retrigger a run, what we really expect to see here is that previously there's always that new data coming through to that stage customers and that customer model, right? And this time, because we've put in place that build after, even when we do see new data coming through there, we're actually not going to build that. We're simply going to reuse that model because enough time hasn't passed since the last build with that build after of 2 hours. And so jumping into this now, we can look at this DBT build and we can go through to our stage, what do we call this, stage customers model. And we can see here, we actually did have new data to incorporate. We see this as a view. We see there were new changes detected upstream, but we see because we didn't meet that build after 2 hours, because it was updated 6 minutes and 51 seconds ago, we're simply able to reuse that model. And this is really powerful because it allows you to encode those business SLAs directly into your project code at any level throughout the DAG. And then this is what really allowed our own data team to go from those initial like 10+% savings just from turning it on to an eventual 64% savings when they were able to split up their DAG into simply 2 jobs rather than the previous 16, right? And then encode that business logic into how often they needed the data to actually slow those builds down and simply meet the SLAs rather than overbuilding simply for the sake of keeping everything fresh. All of these things you see here are really made possible with the power and semantic understanding of the Fusion engine. And so let's talk about what we've built with efficient testing. Traditionally in DBT, we run a test set at the end of every model that builds. This is great because it really ensures data quality by ensuring tests pass as data changes across the lineage. But it also means that we're probably overusing tests. And with efficient testing, we set out to build something that means you only run the tests that are actually needed. And so if you have a unique test that passes upstream with the column aware and semantic understanding of Fusion, if there isn't any logic that invalidates that test on the next downstream model, we're simply able to reuse that passing test rather than running it again. And this speeds up runtimes and reduces costs by avoiding this unnecessary computation. And so, how do we do this? Using Fusion's semantic understanding of the SQL, we don't just skip the tests. We actually reuse them because we already know that the test is statistically guaranteed to pass. There isn't any SQL logic that's going to invalidate whatever the unique joins or where conditions that depend on that individual test run upstream. And then when we do run those tests, instead of running each one of those tests as a separate query against the data warehouse, we instead bundle all of those tests into a single query and run that as one query against the data warehouse, further maximizing the compute efficiency. Finally, let's talk about how you can prove these results to the business. And so with state-aware orchestration, we show you the models built and reused across your entire account, so you can really see the impact of the changes you make. And then on the individual jobs, we show you that same view of models built versus reused, so you can fine-tune those advanced configurations and figure out, hey, what do I need to do to actually meet the SLAs of when the business needs the data and how often they need it. And then if you want to go above and beyond, you can also write this cost savings data in dollar or credit terms directly through to your data warehouse. And so this lets you analyze and prove those cost savings wherever you work. But I think even more importantly, this lets you make friends with finance. And so when comes time to ask for that additional headcount and you can show them exactly how much you've saved in your data warehouse bill, hopefully you get it. And so in summary, what we really see is that turning on state-aware orchestration gives you 10% plus in savings. Then tuning those advanced configurations can give you an additional 15% or more. And finally, that efficient testing can add another 4%, making a total of 29%. And DBT Labs was really the first user of Fusion and the first user of state-aware orchestration in production. We're a 9-year-old project with 108 contributors, and historically, efficiency just wasn't a focus. But as we've grown and now, honestly, our data warehouse bill has grown, it's definitely come under scrutiny. And so when we implemented state-aware orchestration, we were able to first of all turn it on and then reconfigure our jobs into two sort of freshness-based tiers. And we achieved these results without rewriting any SQL code. I say SQL here because obviously we did write some YAML in order to put in those build after configs across our project and defaults and then override those for more frequent tiers where needed. But really what we saw here was pretty incredible. We saw a 63% improvement in average job runtime. So for example, an incremental job went from 3.5 hours on average to 25 minutes, and that's 88% faster. We saw 75% models reused daily. That's gone from 9K a build to, only 2.2. And then most importantly, we saw a 64% in annual data warehouse platform savings of all of our DBT related spend. And the hope is that with data-aware orchestration, with those advanced configurations and with the features like efficient testing, all of you can achieve these same results in reducing your data warehouse spend and improving efficiency of your DBT pipelines. Now, I'd like to welcome some of our awesome Fusion beta customers to the stage to introduce themselves. So welcome Patrick, Tyson, and Matt. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Ruben. Patrick Vinton with Analytics 8. We're a data and analytics consultancy out of Chicago, a longtime DBT partner and also a longtime DBT customer. Excited to talk about Fusion today and our experience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt. I'm a senior data engineer over at OB Insurance. Specialize in property landlord insurance, and we're also a recent DBT customer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyson Dobrnik. I'm also a senior data engineer at OB Insurance, and I come with about 5 years of DBT experience.
Yeah, awesome to have you all. I guess, Matt, to start us off, can you talk a bit about like OB's data journey? I know you all started as SDF customers and actually not with DBT. Sort of what was that like and what motivated you to try out DBT Fusion?
Yeah. So when I first joined Obi, it was back in February, and we were kind of already in a transition period. So I think the SDF acquisition news was only about a month old by that point. So actually, a couple of weeks after I started at Obi, I found a calendar invite from my coworker that was to talk about DBT proof of concept. We felt it was a good time to experiment, make a change, since we were kind of taking a greenfield approach to how our data migration process was kind of already undergoing. Um, and then yeah, so it just felt like a good time to try out the proof of concept. It went really well. And then similarly for how Fusion went, we got an invite that we were selected to participate in the program, and the timing really lined up, and it felt like an excellent opportunity. And in hindsight, it's worked out great so far. Been very happy.
No, that's awesome. And then, yeah, was there anything in particular that made you want to try out Fusion? What were you most excited for?
I think by that point, I'd heard a little bit, I was a little bit more familiar with what SDF had previously offered, even though I didn't have a ton of experience with it by the time I joined Obi. But since I knew by that point what it was capable of doing, I was really excited to see how those features were going to be integrated into the Fusion engine, particularly how fast it was going to be.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess, yeah, Patrick, I know you come from the data team at Analytics 8, and I imagine as an analytics consultancy, your business is a pretty heavy consumer of data products.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely practice what we preach for our customers. So As a data analytics consultancy, I mean, you could argue that our entire company is our data team. We have a lot of hands in and out of our data platform and data transformation layer all the time. And in fact, we do something that may or may not be recommended out there for the general customer, but just kind of because we can do it, we rebuild our data platform once every 1 or 2 years, partially as practice, partially to make sure what we're telling our customers is practical. And recently we went on through that experience with Fusion.
Yeah, and I guess like same question for you. Like, what about Fusion was the most compelling from the get-go?
Yeah, a lot of it. As we went to Fusion, it was actually part of a multi-pronged migration. So we were doing, again, just because we can, not necessarily because it was a particularly great idea, we decided to do 5 migrations at once. So we were moving from BigQuery to Databricks. We were moving from Google Dataform to dbt. We were taking some of our reference data from Google Sheets to Sigma input tables, some of our other employee data, pulling it in natively from ADP. And we were also taking the opportunity while we had the hood open to re-envision and rebuild some of the ways we forecast and recognize revenue. So with all that stuff going on, one of the things that excited us most was some of the built-in features for Fusion with SQL comprehension and refactoring. And we were lucky as going through the process that a lot of our hopes and dreams for being able to move quickly were true, because any one of those 5 migrations at once would have been kind of a big challenge. We decided to do them all at the same time, just basically to see how fast we could do it. And so, in short, it was the ability to move quickly and refactor and take advantage of things like column level lineage and things like that.
Yeah, and it's a brave undertaking with 5 at once. So good
Yeah.
on you. I guess, maybe jumping onto Tyson, I guess, can you tell us a bit about how Fusion has changed your day-to-day work once you started building with it?
Absolutely. I've been a big fan of Fusion ever since we got into the beta. I feel like Fusion overall has so many features that makes my job easier, and helps me build better habits. There's so many features like preview CTE and the ability to command and click references within the models themselves, things like lineage. They're all little things that help me save a lot of time in the end. One of the best things that I love about Fusion is it catches the syntax errors before I run the models. That's been a huge time saver for me, knowing that I don't have to rerun the model every time. We save a lot of development time. We save a lot of time in testing because we catch all these things before we have to run and inevitably test that code.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know, like personally, obviously, that Obi has been one of the earliest users of stable orchestration, maybe the first one after our own data team. I guess, what was your pipeline orchestration like before you started with SAO? What is it like now?
Yeah, I can hop in on this one. Yeah, so historically, actually, if I go back to the beginning, our orchestration was a little bit all over the place. We had some prefect orchestration tasks. We had some Snowflake tasks that were running. Our SDF jobs were being orchestrated through systemd timers. So it's kind of like everything in multiple different areas, kind of running on its own. There weren't dependencies between systems, so the pipelines kind of were tricky to recover if there were problems that happened on any one of those areas. So first moving, so I should mention we are cloud platform customers as well. So being able to take advantage of that orchestration has been so helpful, having everything in one place. So immediately, even before we turned on state-aware orchestration, having that global view of all of our CI/CD was a huge benefit for us, especially as a smaller data team, to really not be an obstacle in our daily development. And then once we turned on state-aware orchestration, it just, I mean, even just by flipping the switch, we saw the immediate benefits of like the speed and the reuse of models and the time that that saved us. So yeah, definitely having that centralized view of all of our orchestrations been a huge upgrade for us.
Yeah, oh, great to hear. And then, yeah, Patrick, I know your team is obviously also an early adopter of Fusion. And I guess before we get into sort of the optimization parts of SAO, can you tell us a bit about your day-to-day development experience and how that's changed for you and the team?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the stuff that has already been mentioned is something as simple as preview CTEs and being able to look at your syntax before it's sent to the warehouse. Frankly, I think we all underappreciated that beforehand. We're like, yeah, it's just a developer tool. It's going to make their lives easier. But how much is it really going to accelerate things? Well, the answer wasn't, especially in our case, when we switched platforms and the SQL engines were completely different. It mattered an intense amount. Like I think we probably saved several days of the manual portions of our migrations, maybe even weeks. Something as simple as um, a date function on BigQuery was different in Databricks, and I was really kind of shocked some of the how well Fusion was able to pick up on that and make suggestions and highlight that before I even sent it on to Databricks and try to build things. So it was an underappreciated feature. And how has it changed our day-to-day development? Well, a lot of the work that we do is similar-ish to what we did internally. A lot of the work we do for our customers is migrations. And so seeing how DBT Fusion fits into our approach to things has it's really changed our approach, frankly. So we have an MCP framework that we use to automate and mechanize a lot of the transformations from Platform X to DBT. And what we found was we can get, anywhere from 50 to 80% of those migrations done automatically with AI. And so now the part of our process that's changed is, okay, for that remaining, 50 to 20%, how do we best do that? And what our approaches with Fusion, which frankly we're trying to institutionalize now, it's much different. There would be times where we would go back to AI to try to mechanize things more, whereas what we found was in Fusion, you can move a whole lot faster with the refactoring capabilities moved in, even faster than you could be doing with MCP and AI.
Oh, great to hear. And then, I guess talking about state of orchestration, Matt and Tyson, I know you've seen around a 30% model reuse rate since you turned it on. Sort of how has that translated into time or cost savings for your team, and what kind of results are you seeing so far?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's one that we've been pleasantly surprised with StateAware. Like you said, we've saved about 30% within our orchestration, but Obi is such a I don't want to call it a small company, but we have a lot of growth that we're going to be doing in the next 1 to 3 years. A lot of products on the roadmap and things that we're very excited for. So StateAware orchestration has given us the tools that we need to make this greenfield project that we have with our data stack. It gives us the tool to be able to do it the right way. It helps us cement good habits early so that as we continue to build out more and more data models and more testing and more products for the company, we're not going to be bottlenecked at any stage. Nothing is going to come to surprise us. It really is, I feel like, made us more efficient engineers overall.
Yeah, and I guess as you think about those new projects or existing ones, like what are the fine-tuning parts you expect to use, and what kind of business impact are you hoping to achieve with those?
Yeah, I can hop in here. I think we can definitely continue to tune on a per model basis with some of the like source freshness options that are included with state-aware orchestration. I mean, the fact that we got this benefit just by literally turning the feature on is a huge start. And I think the next thing that we're really focusing on is how we can, after that 30% is already being recognized, how we can look at individual models and say like specifically the build this model after X amount of time or things like that, where we can just really start digging into which data sets are being consumed more or less frequently, and then kind of alter the behavior based on that.
There's
Yeah.
also a there's also a feature called it's a preview feature right now called efficient testing that I'm really excited for. We tried to take a testing first approach for all of our development. And so we have a lot of data tests that we need to run. And so being able to make that step even more efficient is just a cherry on top.
Yeah, love it. And I guess, yeah, Patrick, from your perspective, what are the early results you're seeing from state of orchestration? I know we said model refresh time is down, and sort of what's the downstream impact of some of that efficiency improvement?
Well, downstream impact is pretty easy, and this is, I think, one of the things that I think we as early testers are still trying to get our arms around. For us, it's the the freshness of the data in the downstream analytics, will be it a dashboard, be it some sort of model that's further downstream that's consuming it. Being able to deliver that faster, that's the ultimate business impact that we're seeing, at least the business impact that users care about. I'll say as a data team, state-aware orchestration is really good for us because we got to focus on, as Tyson said, the high-value engineering work. I mean, there's really not high value in orchestration. It's just kind of a means to an end. But being able to, that allows us to focus, state-aware orchestration allows us to focus on meaningful business problems, not just orchestration and trying to stitch code together. There's a big, big, big multiplier for us. The other thing that we found over the years, both in our own backyard as well as in our customers, and we look at their data teams, and as we augment their data teams, um, that the orchestration piece was the part that was kind of the most brittle, and it required the most institutional knowledge. Being able to know, okay, well, this data set refreshes at this time, and here's the downstream effects of it. Yes, of course, you could have stitched all that stuff together with any sort of orchestration tool, but now you get a lot of this kind of for free just by turning it on. So this has kind of forced us, maybe not forced us, this puts us in a position for us to rethink some of our managed services offerings for customers and the way we can parachute consultants in and out of our own analytics system. So big, big, big improvements from both a data engineering standpoint and for what ultimately matters is the downstream end users who consume the analytics.
Yeah. And then I guess for people watching that are using DBT Core or another transformation tool, like I guess what's your message for them and what should they know about DBT Fusion?
Well, for let's put aside some of the Fusion specific features, going back to the orchestration pieces. I guess some of this is Fusion specific now that I think about it. One of the last comments I made was, of course, you can figure out how to orchestrate all this stuff and get everything to cascade and figure out your dependencies. But then you spend as much time managing your orchestration as you do on the data engineering pieces. And so my message to people out there is, sure, you can build it. You could build anything you want. I mean, you could even build your own database platform if you wanted. But why would you? You would need to focus on the high value engineering work and the things that benefit the end users. Users don't benefit from orchestration. They benefit from freshness of data. They benefit from your time being able to plow through new requirements and modeling, do another additional analytics engineering.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, yeah, Matt and Tyson, same question to you, I guess, as data practitioners. What's your message to people who aren't sure whether Fusion is right for them?
Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Criticism.
Classic. Uh, yeah, I would say it's definitely worth exploring. Like if you have questions about it, the best, I mean, as an engineer, I love just getting my hands dirty, trying something out. So I think that's what I really recommend is just give it a spin. If you're a pre-existing like core DBT user, I think you'll very quickly see the benefits of all the quality of life improvements in your development cycle, and you'll be pretty um, yeah, you'll see just how it's going to save you so much time and really allow you to focus on higher value efforts.
Yeah, and to kind of mirror what Matt said, I was a DBT Cloud user. I've been a DBT Core user for many years, depending on the project that I've been in and the company I've been with. But to me, Fusion feels like DBT Core kind of it grew up a little bit. The developer experience is really hard to beat, and it's become an integral part of my workflow when solving problems. There are habits that I've formed where, like, if I'm developing a model, like I'll go and I'll test to make sure that it's working against a pre-existing model to detect changes and things like that. Different levels of testing and previewing the data to make sure that I'm not pushing breaking changes. These are all things that I would have already done in my development workflow. But Fusion makes it to where I don't have to leave the tool I'm currently in order to accomplish those things. It hasn't reinvented what I've done. It's just made me better at what I'm already doing. So, to me, it feels like a no-brainer. I love Fusion. I love how it's came into our workflow and how it's transformed our efficiency as data engineers.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the same thing as for you, Tyson, like you mentioned, coming from core. the path from core to Fusion, frankly, from what we've seen in some of our customer environments and some of our evaluations for them, it was pretty straightforward. We were pleasantly surprised how many projects could be migrated pretty much turnkey for that. So I know that was a fear both internally and for some of our customers is like, yeah, Fusion sounds amazing, but it's going to be a long path just to start the process. And what we found in practice is that's not the case for at least for well-designed um, projects and rollouts and workspaces. And then also coming in ice cold like we were, like we've been DBT customers in and out. And again, not because we don't love DBT, because we do, but we just like trying other things. But like I said, once every 1 or 2 years. This time we came into from Fusion completely ice cold. We came in from Google Dataform, and the path from a completely different platform, when accelerated by AI, candidly, to get a big chunk of the way there, the rest of the path was a really short one. So, I guess my message would be is be not afraid. We can try it. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. With CI/CD, you can make a replica of something and give it a shot and then take an eval from there.
Yeah, sounds like everyone should be jumping in and trying it hands-on. Well, Patrick, Tyson, Matt, thanks so much for joining us. And also thanks for all your time as beta customers and all the feedback you've given us as we continue to make this better and better. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So what's next? As we look ahead, we're really working on bringing that cost data from the warehouse directly into the DBT platform so we can show you how much you're saving without any additional work on your part. We want to build even slimmer CI using the power of Fusion and that column level awareness we get through our semantic understanding to create an even slimmer set of models that are actually changed for your CI jobs. We're working on creating AI agents to automate configurations and save you both time and money as you fine-tune your project. And we're investing in even more automatic cost savings, like dynamic indexing across your tables, so that when you turn on cost efficiency features with Fusion, you get the maximum out of the box that we can cause across your warehouse. And so, how do you get started with this? The reality is anyone on Fusion with an eligible project who's on an enterprise tier plan can go turn this on today. And so you need to simply change your production settings from DBT latest to DBT Fusion. You can then check the boxes in your job settings, and then you can start benefiting from those immediate cost savings through state-of-the-art orchestration and from fine-tuning your model builds as you need across your project. And so thank you very much for coming. That's it from me. And I'm going to pass you back to Leah for some final next steps. If you've got questions, yeah, feel free to hit me up in the chat or to come find me on the community Slack. Always happy to talk more.
Thanks so much, Ruben. I think that Ruben is going to make the nice list this year, and Santa Claus is going to bring him something special after today's presentation. I don't know what y'all think. Let us know in the chat. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Some next steps for you. So you can get started with the DBT Fusion engine in the DBT platform. You can click the Talk to an Expert button at the top right-hand corner of Goldcast, and our team will be in touch. And if you have any other questions or want to meet with us about your specific use case, you can also click that Talk to an Expert button, and our team will be in touch with y'all. And then we'd like for you to join us for our upcoming webinar on maximizing the value of your data platform. That's going to be coming up in January, so you can register now. We'll send a link in the chat for that. And then lastly, we'd love to get feedback on today's session. So please take that survey for us. We'd love to get your feedback and know how to improve these sessions for y'all in the future. So thanks again, and I hope y'all have happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks. Bye.